want the mayor one more time for those that tuned in not early enough to hear the proclamation. The mayor, before we go off, read the proclamation again.
As far as history, it's a proclamation of the city of St. Petersburg, whereas 50 years ago, one of the largest and most memorable political demonstrations in American history took place on August 28, 1963, called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Whereas the march was also the 100-year commemoration of the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation, which marked the beginning of the end of slavery. And whereas the March on Washington was the event where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech to more than 250,000 civil rights supporters from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, setting the stage for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And whereas the march captured the attention of the world and forced all Americans to recognize the injustice of inequality, discrimination, and racism, and further demonstrated how ordinary people could do extraordinary things to peacefully create change and cause leaders to evolve. And whereas, while as a nation we have made significant gains through legislation, voting rights, and other measures over the last 50 years, these efforts have not eliminated discriminatory practices and outcomes within our governments and institutions where racism continues to this day. And whereas we recognize that injustice and discrimination of all forms are still with us, and that our march toward justice is thus not finished. And whereas the issues of jobs, housing, education, and economic opportunities are just as critical today as they were 50 years ago. Now therefore I, Bill Foster, Mayor of the City of St. Petersburg, do hereby proclaim August 28, 2013 as March on Washington Day in the City of St. Petersburg, and ask all residents to join me in commemorating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and recommitting ourselves to the great work that lies ahead.
And Bobby Doctor, on behalf again of all those that we've served with in civil rights and outside of civil rights, that we want to make sure that all of those who have died, Big James Orange, the liaison of the AFL-CIO that I've worked with over the last 33 years that died a few years ago, Johnny May Carr of the Montgomery Improvement Association that I served with, my friend, my right hand, the Reverend Dr. Fred Shuttlesworth, that died last year, and his wife, Sapphira Shuttlesworth. All of those that I was so blessed to, and Jose Williams, and then you can name some of the rest of them. And also Bobby Doctor worked inside the CLC National Office. Is that right now, Bobby? Yeah, and so basically the single most important man with the single most important message in the single most violent century of our nation's history, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we feel so gloriously ecstatic about the fact that the city of St. Petersburg has the longest Martin Luther King Boulevard in the nation, 12.6 miles from the Howard Franklin to the Sunshine Skyway, and they refuse to segregate the memory of the very man that dismantled the walls of segregation, Dr. King, by putting it on 22nd Street from 5th Avenue to 15th Avenue South. And when that failed, they wanted to put it on 5th Avenue to 18th Avenue South. And the city council and the mayors and everybody in the Environment Development Commission, they voted we will not segregate the very man that is singly most importantly and single-handedly almost dismantled the walls of institutional segregation in America. And in the same light, this same city, the first original largest Martin Luther King National Parade in the nation assembled in 1986, January 20th. And for the first time, you saw the historical black colleges, Morris Brown, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, Texas Southern, Jackson State, North Carolina A&T. Never had it been done anywhere, while the rest of the nation, including Atlanta, Georgia, were doing the historic mock civil rights marches. The vision in St. Petersburg was to pass the baton to children and generations yet unborn, and the only way to reach them was through the music and the drum majors of those bands that led the HBC. And remember, St. Petersburg, it wasn't far-fetched, because remember that the third drum major of Washington High School in Atlanta, Georgia, was none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's why he said, if you remember me as a drum major for justice. So basically, St. Petersburg, before anybody start cloning, before anybody start imitating, before anybody start plagiarizing the National MLK Parade of St. Petersburg, Florida, we were the first, averaging 100,000 people a year. Now we have built, after 28 years with the leadership, especially when this mayor came into office, and that city council with Leslie Curran and some of the others, where they put the National MLK Parade on the same footing as the Festival of States. And if the Festival of States got something, the National MLK Parade got something. Before that, they didn't get nothing. And so, and without hesitation, Bobby Doctor, you were there at the time because you was the Grand Marshal of the parade. I remember you riding down the parade, Robert T. Lassiter, and Marvin Denard, and a couple more of them jumped in there with you. And look here, I'm looking down the parade route with ABC and everybody. I see, well, who is this carriage with all these people in it? We got 5 Grand Marshals coming down the parade route. But at any rate, you were there, Bobby Doctor, in the beginning, and you were shocked. I remember Mayor Bill Foster. I was walking behind Lawton Childs and Graham, Senator Graham, and they were walking, and they were walking down Central Avenue, and Maurice, they looked up, and it was 21 lines deep on each side of Central Avenue, and I heard Lawton Childs and Senator Graham didn't know I was right behind him walking too, and Ed Edwards, Bob Graham turned to Lawton and said, God, I'm being euphemistic here, y'all. I'm being kind here. God, who was? Oh yeah, watch this, Bobby. But when the governor was walking and Senator Graham walking, they turned to each other. Graham said, Lord, I ain't never seen these many Negroes in all my life. Y'all, I'm being very mild here, but it was an historic moment, and all the bands from Mississippi, Texas Southern, Houston, everywhere in the country, everywhere they come, when they marching down the parade, Bethune-Cookman, the band director Donovan Wells said, my God, where all these people come from? Because the parade is about 35%, 37% white, and it's because the city council, this city council, they made sure that they put the parade down Central Avenue, where the Festival of States came every year historically for 87 years. And that same city, Doctor, and you made mention of this when you were here in 1996, the same street that separated the races now is the same street that joined the races together, irrespective of creed, religion, ethnicity, and race. And so essentially that's why it's a comfort zone for everybody to be on the Gulf of St. Pete, on Bayshore Drive, and Central Avenue. And while we have harmoniously moved in a sense of unanimity progressively forward because of one of the most progressive city councils we've ever had, and under the leadership that we've had, we want to thank all of us in the city who've joined in this proclamation. It is historic because I think we're the only city in the state of Florida that has issued this proclamation going into the 50th anniversary, standing behind the dream and vision of Dr. King and A. Philip Randolph, and they pulled off that march, and America has never been the same. And all I can say to you in parting, those out there in the listening audience of Praise 1590, and leaving and thanking the general managership and the staff here at WRXB, that this historic moment we had at this radio station, I want to say to you one thing: be there.
The best